And interestingly enough, the words that in Luke's gospel come from this Jewish legal expert in Matthew and Mark's gospels come from Jesus himself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Good answer, Jesus says. Do that and you'll be in good shape. But the legal expert is not satisfied with that. For some reason, he feels a need to justify himself, either to himself or to Jesus or to some friends. Who knows? But he has to justify himself. And so he asks the question, perhaps thinking it lets him off the hook, because maybe it doesn't really have an answer. Who's my neighbor? Hello? Wake up, man. And then Jesus tells this story. For us, the story is so familiar, there are some people who think that it's a historical story, that it's something that actually happened. This is a story Jesus made up, as far as we can tell, on the spot, to drive home a point, to make a statement to this legal expert. Clarence Jordan, y'all have heard, I'm sure, of Clarence Jordan. He's one of the founders of Koinonia Farms in Georgia. He was a great preacher and a great Bible scholar. And Carol, a couple of weeks ago, actually read the gospel text from his Cotton Patch Gospels. This is what he says. This is how he puts Jesus' story about the Good Samaritan. And he has a couple of footnotes, and I'm just going to read the footnotes as they go along because I think they're really good. Then Jesus laid into him and said, a man was going from Atlanta to Albany, and some gangsters held him up. And when they had robbed him of his wallet and his brand new suit, they beat him up and drove off in his car, leaving him unconscious on the shoulder of the highway. Now, it just so happened that a white preacher was going down that same highway. When he saw the fellow, he stepped on the gas and went scooting by. This is one of the footnotes here. His homiletical mind probably made the following outline. Number 1, I do not know the man. Number 2, I do not wish to get involved in any court proceedings. Number 3, I do not want to get blood on my new upholstery. Number 4, the man's lack of proper clothing would embarrass me upon my arrival in town. And 5, finally, brethren, a minister must never be late for worship services. Shortly afterwards, a white gospel song leader came down the road, and when he saw what had happened, he too stepped on the gas. Note, what his thoughts were, we'll never know. But as he whizzed past, he may have been whistling right in the corner where you are. Then a black man traveling that way came upon the fellow, and what he saw moved him to tears. He stopped and bound up his wounds as best he could, drew some water from his water jug to wipe away the blood, and then laid him on the back seat. Note, all the while his thoughts may have been along this line. Somebody's robbed you. Yeah, I know about that. I've been robbed too. And they done beat you up bad. I know I've been beat up too. And everybody just go right on by and leave you laying there hurting. Yeah, I know. They passed me by too. He drove on into Albany, took him to the hospital, and said to the nurse, you take good care of this man this white man I found on the highway. Here's the only $2 I got. But you all keep count of what he owes, and if he can't pay, I'll settle up with you when I make payday. I especially like Jordan's comments on the text there, because they point out stuff that I think we might have missed. Not the interpolation particularly, but they emphasize the compassion. You see, these first two fellows, didn't see a human being lying beside the road. They saw a victim. They saw an obstacle to whatever it was they were doing. Wherever the priest had to go, whatever the Levite was doing, they didn't have the time to deal with a human being. And so they didn't even see a human being. They saw a victim. And this Samaritan came by. He saw the man lying by the road, and he was moved to tears. The gospel text says he was filled with pity. Now, I believe that when Jesus told all these stories that we call parables, his intention was for his audience to put themselves in the story. They had to have some point of identification, some point at which they could connect with the story and make the story a part of their lives rather than something this traveling preacher just happened to spout off. So in this story, we essentially have four actors. We have a victim, a human being who's beaten and robbed, and that's all we know about him. He was on his way from Jerusalem to Jericho. We don't know why. Maybe he's going to see family. Who knows? We don't know. We have a priest, a religious leader of the people who had particular duties in the temple. Had particular duties outlined in the law that told him how he was supposed to live his life and what he was supposed to do. We have a Levite, who is likewise a religious professional whose duties also very often included political aspects.